Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The moment it happened, the air around the training yard turned painfully still. For recruits, Jarek, Nolan, Frey and the towering Dax closed in on the lone girl at the center of the sand ring. Her name was Lyra Van. She had been at Naval Station Halworth for only 2 days, yet the entire base already whispered about her. A girl, assigned to a pre-SEAL evaluation team? It was unheard of. And the 4 recruits, all bigger and older than her, made sure she felt every ounce of their resentment. Dax stepped forward first, cracking his knuckles as if warming up before a fight. "You don't belong here, princess," he said, his voice loud enough for the other trainees watching from the fence line. The sun behind him flared like a halo, turning the sweat on his forehead into beads of fire. "We're gonna help you understand that." Lyra didn't move, didn't flinch. She only blinked once, slow, controlled, as if counting the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She had seen eyes like theirs before, eyes hungry for dominance, for a target to crush just to feel taller. She scanned them, noting stance, spacing, the slight tremble in Nolan's right knee, the overconfidence dripping from Dax's smirk. She felt her chest tighten, not from fear but from the memory that always returned at the worst times. Her brother lying on a cold hospital floor, whispering, "Don't let them break you too." Frey shoved her shoulder. "Art." The crowd murmured. Dust rose in a ring around her boots. "Say something," Frey demanded. "Or did you lose your voice along with your courage?" Lyra inhaled slowly. The wind tasted like salt and metal. She could feel her pulse sinking with the rhythmic clatter of distant training rifles. She wasn't here to impress them. She wasn't here to fight. But humiliation had a way of forcing the truth out of people, and right now, every eye around the ring begged for a reason not to look away. Jarek spat at the sand beside her boot. "We're giving you one chance to step out and save yourself. Take it." She lifted her chin. "No." The word hit harder than a punch. Sure. Unshakable. Dax laughed and rotated his shoulders. "Then don't blame us for what happens next." They started to circle her, slow, deliberate, like wolves testing the nerves of their prey. Nolan lunged first, fingers reaching for her collar. The trainees watching held their breath. And then everything exploded. Her hand shot up, deflecting Nolan's grip with a twist that sent pain ripping through his wrist. Before his gasp reached the air, she pivoted, ducked under Dax's swing and swept his legs from beneath him. Sand burst upward as his massive frame crashed to the ground. "What?" Frey managed, but she was already moving. A blur. The storm. She sidestepped Jarek, redirected his momentum, and drove him into the dirt with a force that knocked the air from his lungs. 45 seconds. That was all it took. 45 seconds to transform the quiet girl everyone mocked into something none of them had expected. Nolan was groaning on the ground. Jarek clutched his ribs. Frey lay stunned, staring at the sky as if trying to understand what universe he had fallen into. And Dax, towering, feared Dax, struggled to get to his knees, his pride shattered. But Lyra wasn't even breathing hard. From the fence line someone whispered, She moves like a seal." Someone else answered, voice trembling, "No recruit moves like that." Dax forced himself upright, anger burning through humiliation. What are you?" Lyra looked at all 4 of them, her voice low but steady. "I'm someone you should have never cornered." Before anyone could respond, a deep voice thundered from the command tower. "Stop the drill. Now." Every head snapped toward the staircase as Commander Reddick stormed down the steps, eyes locked on Lyra with a mix of shock and something else. Recognition. The wind paused. The crowd leaned in, and Lyra knew, her past had just caught her. Commander Reddick reached the sand ring with footsteps so heavy they seemed to shake the boards of the observation deck behind him. The recruits stepped back instinctively. Even Dax, who had never shown fear of anything, not fists, not officers, lowered his gaze when Reddick's shadow crossed him. The commander's presence was a storm contained inside a man, broad shoulders, weather-creased eyes, and a voice that could cut through steel. But when he looked at Lyra, something fragile flickered behind that authority. Not softness. Not weakness. More like the ghost of a memory he wished he could outrun. "Everyone clear the yard," Reddick barked. "Now." The trainees scattered like startled birds, whispering as they ran. Only Lyra and the 4 recruits stayed put, frozen between shame and confusion. Reddick pointed at Jarek, Nolan, Frey and Dax. Medbay. All of you. You'll answer for this later. The four hurried off, clutching bruises and egos. Lyra turned to follow them, but Reddick's voice pinned her in place. Not you. Stay. She halted. The wind pushed against her back as if urging her to run, but she stood firm. Reddick approached slowly, studying her with an intensity she couldn't decipher. She'd felt plenty of eyes on her before, curious eyes, mocking eyes, doubting eyes, but his gaze was different. It was searching, testing, almost afraid. What was that display? He demanded, though it sounded less like anger and more like disbelief. Where did you learn to move like that? She didn't answer. Not yet. Not here. The memory of her brother flashed again. His last deployment, his last call, his last breath. She tightened her fists. Reddick exhaled, a low sigh that carried years of buried frustration. Lyra Van, he muttered as if the name itself tugged something loose inside him. I knew this day would come. Her heartbeat jolted. You knew me? Knew of you, he corrected. The girl who disappeared after her brother's final operation. The one the intelligence reports called the Phantom, because no one could track where you went after his death. His jaw tensed. They said you vanished completely. Lyra swallowed hard. I didn't vanish. I trained. Reddick's eyes narrowed. Trained where? She hesitated, but only briefly. If he already knew this much, hiding the rest was pointless. With his unit's retired instructor, Chief Arlen Voss. Reddick froze. The color drained slightly from his face. Voss? As in Marine Raider Voss? The one who disappeared off-grid 12 years ago. She nodded. Reddick stepped back as if steadying himself. That man trained legends. Ghosts. Operators so lethal their files were classified above top secret. His voice dropped. And you expect me to believe he trained you out of the goodness of his heart? Lyra's chest tightened. No. Not out of goodness. The wind shifted. Sand curled around their boots. For a moment, the base felt 1,000 miles away. He trained me, she said quietly, because my brother asked him to, before his last mission. He told Voss that if anything happened to him, I wouldn't survive the world unless I learned how to fight it. Reddick's posture softened, but his eyes burned. And this, he gestured at the ring where 4 recruits still groaned in the distance, is what you think fighting the world looks like? They surrounded me, she replied. They wanted humiliation, not a lesson. I just made sure they understood I wasn't the one who'd break. Silence wrapped around them like a cold blanket. Reddick rubbed his temples. You can't be here, Lyra. The words sliced deeper than she expected. This program isn't designed for someone with your background, he continued. You're too advanced. Too unpredictable. And if the wrong people find out who trained you. He cut himself off, jaw locking. Commander, she said softly, with respect. I didn't come here to hide. His eyes lifted to hers. I came here to finish what my brother started. Reddick stared at her for a long, unbroken moment. Then his expression changed. A shift. A crack. A decision forming behind his guarded silence. Then God help us all, he whispered. Because in that instant he realized something he'd never expected. Lyra Van wasn't here to learn how to become a SEAL. She was here to prove she already moved like one. Lyra lay awake long after lights out, staring at the thin shadow lines cast across the ceiling of the women's barracks. The room smelled of detergent and old metal, the familiar scent of every military base she had ever stepped foot in. But tonight it felt heavier, like the air itself was waiting for something. The whispers had started as soon as she walked back from the training yard. Trainees stared at her bunk, then at her face, then quickly looked away. Some were afraid. Some were impressed. Most were confused. None of that mattered. What weighed on her mind was the look in Commander Reddick's eyes. Recognition. Fear. And something else. A warning he never finished saying. She turned onto her side, her hand brushing against the small cloth pouch she kept hidden under her pillow. Inside it was the only object she had carried from her old life, her brother's broken dog tag. The metal was split diagonally, a jagged crack dividing his name from his serial number. The tag had been found beside him on the day he died. His final message to her, Voss had said. Never let the world silence you. A floorboard creaked. Lyra stiffened, instantly alert. Someone was standing at the doorway of the barracks. Not moving. Just watching. Her heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up, a habit Voss had drilled into her. Fear was loud. Survival was quiet. She slipped silently from her bunk, her feet barely touching the cold floor. When she stepped into the hallway, the figure turned and disappeared around the corner. Lyra followed, eyes sharp, breath steady, body relaxed but ready. The hallway was empty. Too empty. A whisper drifted from behind her. "You're fast." She spun. Dax leaned against the wall, bandaged ribs showing beneath his half-zipped jacket, frustration etched deeply in his expression. But he wasn't alone. Nolan stood beside him, arms crossed. Frey and Jarek were farther back, leaning awkwardly on crutches and wraps. Lyra stepped into a defensive stance automatically. Dax lifted both hands. "Relax. We're not here for a round two." "Then why follow me?" she asked. Nolan shifted uncomfortably, his pride still smarting. "We wanted answers." "About what?" Jarek spoke for the first time, his voice quieter than she expected. "About what you are." Lyra held their gaze evenly. "I'm a recruit. Same as you." Frey laughed bitterly. "Recruits don't dismantle 4 trained men in under a minute." Dax pushed away from the wall. "Look, we were jerks. We know that. But what we saw today wasn't normal. And Reddick? He looked at you like he'd seen a ghost." He exhaled, shoulders sinking. "We just want to know if we should be afraid of you." Lyra considered the question. Voss had taught her many things, but not how to handle curiosity from those she might one day need beside her. After a moment, she shook her head. "You don't need to fear me." Nolan frowned. "Then who should we fear?" She didn't answer. Not because she was hiding something, but because she didn't yet have the full truth. She only had pieces. Symbols scribbled in her brother's notes. A half-translated message found on his encrypted tablet. A warning he never got to deliver. Before she could speak, a distant alarm bell rang, short, sharp, unmistakable. Recruits burst from nearby barracks, sprinting into formation. Dax cursed softly. "That's the emergency muster. Something's wrong." Lyra felt it too. The tension in the air. The vibration beneath the metal flooring. A shift that didn't feel like routine training. They ran outside just as Commander Reddick mounted the platform overlooking the courtyard. Floodlights snapped on, bathing the base in harsh white glare. His expression was carved from stone. "Listen carefully," he said, voice booming across the field. An unauthorized drone breached perimeter airspace. It wasn't scouting randomly. His eyes locked on Lyra. It was searching for someone specific. A chill crawled up her spine. Reddick continued, "Someone high risk. Someone whose presence here was never supposed to be discovered." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then Reddick said the words that froze her blood. "They're looking for Lyra Van." The courtyard erupted into whispers so loud they nearly drowned out the hum of the floodlights. Recruits exchanged shocked glances, some stepping away from Lyra instinctively, as though her name had become radioactive. Lyra kept her face still, but inside her pulse thundered. Someone had found her. Someone who wasn't supposed to know she existed. Not here, not now, not after everything she'd done to vanish. Commander Reddick raised a hand, silencing the crowd instantly. His gaze swept the formation, pausing on Lyra for a fraction of a second too long. "Everyone is to remain in designated sleeping quarters until further notice. No exceptions. Training is suspended." He turned sharply to the senior staff. "Lock down the armory. Increase perimeter sweeps. Full blackout mode." Officers scattered to carry out his orders. Lyra felt the air tighten around her. Blackout mode wasn't used lightly. It meant danger. Real danger. The kind that didn't warn twice. She stepped out from the formation. "Sir." "Not here," Reddick snapped without looking at her. "Follow me." Dax, Nolan, Frey, and Jarek exchanged looks but said nothing as she was led away. Some recruits stared with wide-eyed curiosity, others watched her with distrust. A few looked at her with something that resembled fear. Not of what she'd done earlier, but of what she might bring to their doorstep. Reddick didn't speak until they reached his office. He shut the door with a force that rattled the frame. Papers on his desk trembled. Only the dim glow of a desk lamp lit the room, casting long shadows over medals and maps pinned to the walls. "Sit," he ordered. She remained standing. "Lyra." His voice softened but only slightly. "Sit." Reluctantly she obeyed. Reddick leaned against his desk, crossing his arms. "I need you to tell me everything. No. Whoever sent that drone didn't want reconnaissance data. It scanned the base with facial recognition tech. It locked onto you in seconds." Her stomach twisted. "Then they know where I am." He nodded grimly. "Which means we don't have much time." Lyra clasped her hands to keep them from shaking. "I didn't think they'd follow me here." "They?" Reddick repeated. "Meaning who?" She hesitated. Memories flickered like broken film. A warehouse. Gunfire. The sharp smell of gasoline. Her brother's warning, if you ever see that mark again, run. She swallowed the rising dread. An organization my brother was investigating before he died, she said quietly. A covert group he called the Veil. She looked up. They weren't just criminals. They had military training, access to encrypted tech. And they wanted something from him, something he refused to give. Reddick's jaw tightened. And after his death, they came after you. Yes. What did they want? She hesitated. A file. The last thing he ever hid. I don't know what's in it. I only know he encrypted it and, the words caught in her throat. And he trusted me to protect it. Reddick's concern shifted into something sharper. Where is it? In a place only I can access. He exhaled, rubbing his forehead. Lyra, if the Veil tracked you all the way here, it means they're escalating. They're not just searching. They're hunting. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Finally, Reddick opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope stamped with a red insignia. He tossed it onto the table. You left me no choice, he said. I contacted Naval Command when you arrived. They sent this earlier today. I wasn't going to open it until morning. Lyra stared at the envelope. Open it, Reddick said. Her fingers brushed the seal. It broke with a soft crack. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Her throat dried as she read the first line. Lyra Van is to remain under direct observation. Her presence is classified. Then her eyes dropped to the final sentence, one that made her blood run ice cold. If hostile forces pursue her, do not protect her. Do not intervene. She is to be surrendered. She looked up, heart pounding. Commander, what does this mean? Reddick's expression told her the truth before his voice did. It means, he said quietly, you were never safe here. Lyra felt the room tilt as if the floor had been yanked a few inches to the left. Surrendered. The word echoed through her chest like a cold bell. Not protected. Not shielded. Not supported. Surrendered. As if she were property. As if her life meant nothing next to whatever political game Command was playing. The lamp on Reddick's desk flickered, casting jagged shadows across the walls, shadows that made the room feel smaller, tighter, suffocating. Reddick didn't speak. He just watched her, waiting for the moment she broke. But she didn't. She steadied her breaths, her voice flat. So that's it? You'll hand me over? His eyes flashed. I didn't say that. You didn't deny it either. Reddick pushed himself away from the desk, pacing slowly. The creases in his uniform rippled with each step. You don't understand the pressure Command is under. Whatever the Veil is, they've made people in powerful rooms very nervous. Nervous enough to view you as a liability. A potential spark for something bigger. He exhaled sharply. They think sacrificing one person is better than risking a wider conflict. Lyra clenched her fists. I'm not a spark. They're the danger. And Command doesn't care, Reddick replied. They only care about stability. Optics. Containment. He stopped pacing and faced her. But I'm not Command. Silence pulsed between them. What are you saying? She asked quietly. Reddick rested his hands on the edge of the desk. I'm saying I didn't bring you here to surrender you. He ran a hand over his jaw. I brought you here because I owe your brother a debt. Her breath caught. You knew him? Reddick nodded slowly as if revealing a secret he had avoided for years. We served together on a joint operation 8 years ago. Your brother saved my life during a raid gone wrong. I never got to repay him. His gaze deepened. So when I read your name on the initial report, I knew exactly who you were. Lyra's throat tightened. She had never expected the past to follow her here, not like this, not through someone who had stood beside her brother in the darkest moments of war. Reddick continued, your brother once told me something. He said, if anything happens to me, look out for my sister. She'll pretend she needs no one. But she does. The commander's voice softened. I didn't think I'd ever have the chance to honor that. Lyra blinked hard against the sting behind her eyes. She had spent years training to be unbreakable. But this crack in the armor, was one she didn't know how to close. But Commander, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, if you go against Command's orders, they'll come for you too. He shrugged. Let them. I've survived worse storms. She shook her head. You don't understand the Veil. They're not just trained, they're invisible. They disappear before you even know you're in danger. A sudden vibration rattled the window behind them. Then another. Then a faint buzzing, low and rhythmic, like a swarm of mechanical insects approaching. Reddick's head snapped toward the glass. Get down. Lyra ducked automatically just as a flash of red light streaked past the window, followed by a metallic clatter on the roof. Reddick cursed and sprinted to the wall console, slamming his palm against the alarm button. Sirens blared across the base, piercing the night. "They're here already?" Lyra breathed. "That fast?" Reddick grabbed his sidearm. This wasn't a scouting drone. That was a targeting beacon. Lyra stood, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Then they're coming for me." Reddick nodded grimly. "And they won't be subtle." Outside the ground trembled. Boots. Engines. Something heavy approaching the gates. Reddick turned to her, eyes blazing with urgency. "Lyra, listen very carefully. If you stay here they'll box you in. If you run they'll track you. But there's a third option." "What option?" He threw open a locked cabinet and tossed her a black duffel bag. "You're going to let them think you ran." Lyra stared at him. "And what will I do while they chase a ghost?" she asked. Reddick gave a grim smile. "You're going to hunt the hunters." The night swallowed the base in darkness as blackout mode activated. Floodlights died. Windows dimmed. Generators cut to a low, strategic hum. Only the moon remained, sharp, pale, and unsettlingly bright over the metal roofs. Lyra followed Reddick through a narrow service corridor beneath the command wing, her boots barely making a sound on the grated floor. The duffel bag he'd given her felt heavier than its weight, as if it carried the burden of every decision she had made since her brother died. Reddick tapped his wrist screen, unlocking a hidden hatch. "This tunnel leads outside the west perimeter," he whispered. "The Vale's ground team will expect you to exit the north or south gates. They won't predict you slipping out behind the storage depots." Lyra tightened her grip on the bag strap. "But once I'm outside they'll track me. They always do." Reddick paused. "Only if you give them something to track." He opened the hatch fully. Inside was a compact drone jammer, a thermal cloak, and a signal scrambling bracelet. Lyra's breath hitched. "These are prototype tech. They're not even approved for field testing yet." "Command doesn't know I kept a set," Reddick answered quietly. "Your brother trusted me with a lot more than my superiors did." She absorbed his words slowly, her throat closing with a mixture of grief and gratitude. She'd lived so long without allies that the presence of one now felt almost dangerous. "When you get outside, activate the cloak and move straight east toward the dunes. There's a ridge about 2 miles out. From there, you'll have a vantage point to observe whoever enters the base." "And you?" she asked. He gave a tight, humorless smile. "I'll buy you time. And I'll try to keep the recruits alive." Lyra's jaw clenched. "Dax, Nolan, Jarek, Frey. They don't deserve to get caught in this." "They won't," Reddick promised. "But you need to focus. This is bigger than 4 recruits." A distant boom shook the walls, followed by another, closer this time. Lyra stiffened. "They're breaching already." "Then move," Reddick barked. "Now." She stepped into the tunnel, but before she disappeared into the shadows she looked back. "Commander, thank you. For not surrendering me." Reddick held her gaze. "I'm not doing this for command. I'm doing it for your brother. And because you deserve a chance to finish what he started." She nodded once, firm, steady, and ran. The tunnel air was cold and sharp. She moved with precision, each step controlled, silent. Vasa's training came back to her like muscle memory. Low posture, steady breathing, eyes scanning corners before she reached them. She counted her steps. Counted her breaths. Counted the seconds between distant explosions. By the time she reached the exit hatch, sweat pricked her hairline. She pressed her ear against the metal door, listening. Only wind. No engines. No footsteps. She pushed it open. The desert greeted her with stillness. Sand stretched endlessly, a pale battlefield beneath the moon. She activated the thermal cloak. Its fabric shimmered and fused with the surrounding air. Her outline blurred, becoming a ghost among the dunes. She sprinted. Behind her, another explosion lit the sky orange. She didn't look back. She needed elevation. A clear view. A place to watch the hunters without being seen. Her lungs burned as she climbed the dune ridge. When she reached the crest, she dropped to her stomach and peered back toward the base. Her blood ran cold. Black armored vehicles rolled through the breached gate. Silenced rotors carried 3 matte black helicopters overhead. Figures in tactical gear sprinted in formation. No insignia, no lights, no hesitation. And then she saw something worse. A tall figure stepped out of the central vehicle, his face hidden beneath a visor. But the symbol etched on his shoulder plate? A half circle with a single vertical slash. Her brother's last warning. "If you ever see that mark again, run." Lyra's breath froze. The Veil hadn't just sent a ground team. They had sent their commander. And he wasn't searching the base at random. He was heading straight for Reddick. Lyra pressed herself deeper into the sand, heart hammering against ribs like a warning drum. The moonlight carved the helicopter's silhouettes against the black sky. The Veil's ground team moved with mechanical precision. Silent, lethal, every movement synchronized. She adjusted the thermal cloak, blending into the dune shadows, watching the chaos unfold below. Reddick's voice crackled in her earpiece, low and urgent. They're heading for the armory first. You have 30 seconds to get a vantage point. I can't hold them off much longer. She swallowed, gut tightening. 30 seconds. Not enough to think, only enough to act. Her eyes scanned the ridge. A narrow crevice offered cover, a split in the dunes carved naturally by wind. She sprinted toward it, sand biting her ankles, body low, muscles screaming. Every instinct screamed that if she failed, Command, Reddick, and anyone caught inside the base would pay the price. She reached the crevice and dropped into the shadow, adjusting her position. The duffel bag shifted against her back, filled with emergency rations, scrambling devices, and the encrypted drive that held her brother's last mission files. She unzipped it quickly, checking the contents. Nothing was missing. Good. No mistakes here, not tonight. From her vantage, she could see the armored vehicles splitting into squads. Black-clad figures emerged, moving like shadows on the concrete. One team approached the dormitories. Another flanked the command wing. And at the center, a figure, taller, broader, moving with terrifying confidence, bore the half-circle mark she had memorized from her brother's warning. A chill crawled up her spine. That mark had always meant one thing: he was the strategist. The one who orchestrated chaos without hesitation. The one who could read any battlefield and anticipate every move. He was not here for reconnaissance. He was here for war. Lyra's fingers went to the duffel strap. The signal scrambling bracelet. She activated it, sending an invisible cloud across the immediate area. Her chest rose and fell as the team's movement slowed ever so slightly. Confusion. They weren't sure why their scanners were faltering. Good. She had only bought herself a few precious seconds. Then she saw Dax, Nolan, Frey and Jarek, bruised but alive, ducking behind overturned vehicles in the perimeter lot. They froze when their eyes met hers. She raised a hand, signaling them to stay low. This wasn't the time for reunion. Not yet. Her mind raced. Voss's lessons were running through her like a mantra. Control the space, control the flow, control yourself. She scanned again, spotting the figure heading directly toward Reddick, who had barricaded himself behind the command wing's reinforced doors. Reddick's hand rested on his pistol, but his posture was tense. Even he couldn't hold the line alone against the Veil's commander. She bit back a curse. 30 seconds. 25. Her eyes darted around the ridge. She needed a plan. She could not confront him head-on, too dangerous. Not yet. But if she could isolate him, distract his team, she could turn the hunt into a trap. A flash of memory hit her. Her brother's voice, echoing in training halls and empty warehouses alike. Asterisk, when they think you're running, that's when you strike. Never wait for them to make the first mistake. Make them make it for you. Asterisk. Her jaw set. She wasn't running. Not from him. Not from the Veil. She crawled to the edge of the dune, breath shallow, eyes locked on the commander. The wind caught her hair, lifting it like a banner, but the thermal cloak held her form. She exhaled slowly, steadying her pulse. Time slowed. 15 seconds. This was it. The moment to turn the hunter into the hunted. The moment where all of her training, her brother's sacrifices, and every long-lost lesson from Voss would collide into one perfect strike. And then the first shot rang out, shattering the night, echoing across the dunes, and signaling that the war had begun in earnest. The crack of gunfire echoed across the dunes, sharp and jarring, setting every nerve in Lyra's body on high alert. Sand exploded near her position as bullets splintered against rocks. She stayed low, letting her instincts take over. Her heart was steady now, firing didn't panic her. It was the language she had learned to speak, the rhythm she understood. The Veil's commander moved with terrifying precision, directing his team as if every shot was preordained. Lyra adjusted the duffel on her back, fingers brushing the encrypted drive. She couldn't let it fall into their hands. Not after everything. Not after her brother. Every movement she'd made since stepping into this base had led to this moment. Her pulse synced with the distant rotor blades, the hum of armored engines, the hiss of her own suppressed breaths. She saw Reddick taking cover behind the command wing, exchanging shots with two operators closing in. Even with his skill he was stretched thin. Her jaw clenched. She had to create a distraction. She scanned the ridge, spotting a shallow crater formed by old shelling, perfect for concealing movement. With a deep breath, she sprinted, sand giving way beneath her boots. A figure spotted her, a Veil operative turning just in time. Lyra ducked behind a jagged rock, pulling the signal scrambling bracelet from her wrist. The device emitted a pulse that distorted their thermal scopes, confusing the sensors. The operative hesitated, scanning the ridge. Lyra's eyes narrowed. This hesitation was all she needed. She moved fast, silent as a shadow, circling behind the team advancing toward the base. Every step was calculated, measured, precise. A flicker of movement, the shadow of the half-circle commander, caught her eye. He paused, sensing something off. The wind carried the faintest hum of the bracelet. He frowned, scanning upward. His team followed his gaze instinctively. Lyra took a deep breath. Her first move had to be clean. She pulled a flash charge from the duffel, setting it near a boulder where the forward Veil squad crouched. She sprinted back to cover, heart hammering as seconds dragged like hours. The charge exploded in a burst of light and noise, blinding the squad for a heartbeat. Chaos erupted. Shouts cut through the night as bullets flew indiscriminately. The commander hissed through his comms, issuing commands, but the precision he relied on faltered. Lyra's advantage was small but crucial, enough for her to reposition. She darted from shadow to shadow, eyes fixed on him. Meanwhile, Dax, Nolan, Frey and Jarek had regrouped, using her distraction to reach the perimeter vehicles. Their eyes met hers briefly, acknowledgement passing without words. They were battered, bruised and wary, but alive. Lyra allowed herself a fraction of pride. The commander now moved alone, splitting from the rest of his team, heading toward the center of the courtyard where Reddick continued to defend the command wing. Lyra's mind raced. She had 30 meters, a narrow angle, and only one chance to strike without being detected. The wind was in her favor, carrying her scent away from him. She exhaled slowly, focusing. This was what Voss had taught her. Patience, timing, control. Strike only when the enemy expects it least. She pulled a compact grappling hook from her pack, aiming for a low roof ledge above the commander's path. With a swift motion she launched it, climbing quickly, muscles coiled with power. From her vantage above she could see him now, every precise motion, every calculated step. He didn't notice her. Not yet. But he would. And then she would remind him that the hunter is not always the predator. She drew her sidearm, suppressor clicked in place, eyes cold and unwavering. The wind shifted. The commander looked up. Their eyes locked. Time froze. And in that heartbeat, Lyra realized this confrontation would not just be survival. It would be vengeance, closure, and proof that nothing she had trained for was wasted. The first shot was fired, silenced, precise, and the night erupted into violence. The commander's visor reflected the faint moonlight, a pale glint over the half-circle insignia that had haunted Lyra's nightmares. He moved fast, calculated, aware of every angle, every shadow, but Lyra was faster. She dropped from the ledge above him, landing silently behind the nearest Veil operative. In a fraction of a second, she incapacitated him with a precise strike to the back of the neck, the man crumpling without a sound. The commander's head snapped toward the movement. Recognition flashed in his eyes. He knew she wasn't an ordinary recruit. Not by a mile. He lunged for her, but she sidestepped effortlessly, twisting her body into a controlled counter that sent him staggering forward. Sand flew in every direction. His team faltered, confusion and fear flickering across their disciplined faces. "Commander Voss trained you?" he hissed, disbelief mingling with rage. Lyra didn't answer. Words would only slow her down. Instead, she kicked a tactical flare into the sand near the remaining operatives. Flames erupted, blinding their sensors, throwing the courtyard into strobing shadows. Screams and gunfire echoed off the base walls. From the perimeter, Dax and the others engaged the remaining Veil operatives, drawing attention and buying her precious seconds. Jarek shoved a man into a vehicle, Nolan dismantled a rifle in the chaos and Frey, though badly bruised, set a trap with explosive wires that sent another operative sprawling. Lyra's eyes never left the commander. She could feel the weight of her brother's memory pressing her forward, guiding every movement. The commander recovered, pulling a combat knife. He advanced with precision, footfalls whispering against the sand. Lyra's pulse was steady now, every muscle coiled, every sense sharp. She ducked under his swing, twisting his wrist, disarming him and sending the blade clattering across the courtyard. "You don't understand," he growled. "You're outnumbered." outgunned. And this, he gestured at the chaos, is only the beginning. The Veil, they always win. They don't win, Lyra replied, voice low but cutting through the gunfire. Not today. Not when I'm standing. Her next movement was a blur. She grabbed the commander's arm, used his momentum to slam him into the sand, then pivoted, delivering a precise elbow strike to his jaw. He staggered back, disoriented, and for the first time, fear flickered in his visored eyes. Above, the moonlight caught the shimmering fabric of her thermal cloak, but she deactivated it now. She wanted him to see her fully. A symbol, a message, she was not a shadow. She was a force. From the command wing, Reddick emerged, sidearm in hand. Need a hand? He called. Lyra nodded, and together they corralled the remaining operatives. The courtyard became a controlled chaos. Every step she took was measured, decisive, lethal, but not reckless. Each move was a culmination of years of loss, training, and the promise she had made to her brother. Finally, the commander fell to his knees, blood trickling from a split brow, hands raised. The staccato of gunfire faded as his remaining team surrendered, realizing their leader was defeated. Lyra stood over him, chest heaving, gaze steady. She had won, but not just for herself. For Reddick, for her brother, and for the ghosts of the past who had taught her how to survive. Reddick walked up beside her, surveying the wreckage. You did it, he said simply, awe in his voice. You actually did it. Lyra exhaled, letting the tension slip just enough for a small, weary smile. It's not over, she said. The Veil will regroup. They'll come back. They'll remember this night, Reddick said, voice low. They'll remember you. She nodded. The fire of vengeance in her chest was tempered now by clarity. She had proven herself. She had survived. And she had sent a message no one would forget. Lyra Van wasn't a girl to corner. She was a force to be reckoned with. Above them, the night sky remained silent, save for the rising wail of alarms across the base. And in that quiet moment, between chaos and calm, Lyra finally allowed herself to breathe. She had faced the hunter, and she had become the predator. The base was quiet now, but the air still buzzed with the echoes of chaos. Smoke curled from scorched vehicles, and sand clung to every surface like a thin layer of dust over memory. Lyra crouched near the ridge, watching as reinforcements arrived from Naval Command. Their presence was immediate, precise, but even their trained eyes couldn't fully grasp the destruction the Veil had intended. Reddick stood beside her, surveying the courtyard below. His uniform was torn, dust streaked across his face, yet his stance remained unbroken. You handled that better than anyone I've ever trained, he said, voice steady but edged with awe. Including some of my SEALs. Lyra allowed herself a small, wry smile. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because it had to be done. Her eyes lingered on the fallen commander, half-circle insignia still visible in the moonlight. He'll be back in some form. They always come back. But tonight, he knows who he's dealing with. Your brother would be proud, Reddick said quietly. Lyra stiffened at the mention, swallowing the lump forming in her throat. It had been years since anyone had mentioned him without judgment, without pity. His memory had always been a wound, now slightly less raw, edged with pride instead of sorrow. I hope so, she admitted. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the breeze sweeping across the dunes. Everything I trained for, every silent hour, every bruise, every sleepless night, it led to this moment. The 4 recruits, Dax, Nolan, Jarek, and Frey, emerged from the perimeter lot, each one limping, battered but alive. Their eyes met hers, a mixture of fear, awe, and unspoken apology. Lyra inclined her head toward them. You survived because you didn't give up. That counts for something. Dax stepped forward first, voice hesitant. Lyra, we underestimated you. Big time. His jaw tightened. He stopped, shaking his head. Words failed him. She nodded, accepting the acknowledgement without a trace of malice. There was no need. Humiliation had been replaced by respect. The sun began to rise over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of amber and gold. It illuminated every shadow, every scar, and every truth left in the wake of the night's battle. Lyra felt the weight of her duffel bag on her back, the encrypted drive resting against her chest, a symbol of her brother's legacy and the future she now carried alone. Reddick placed a firm hand on her shoulder. You don't have to do this alone anymore, he said. Command will acknowledge your actions. They'll see what I saw tonight. You'll get the recognition you deserve. She shook her head, eyes fixed on the horizon. Recognition isn't why I survived. I survived to protect what matters, to honor my brother, and to prove to myself that I could face the impossible, and win. Reddick nodded, understanding without argument. Then what now? Lyra exhaled slowly, letting the first warmth of sunlight touch her face. Now, I plan. I train. I prepare. The veil isn't finished. Neither am I. But tonight we won. The 4 recruits approached cautiously, now tentative allies rather than adversaries. Each one offered a small nod, a silent pledge of acknowledgement. Lyra accepted it. She didn't need their words. Actions carried more weight than any apology or praise. From the ridge she watched the base stir, recovery, regrouping, planning. The chaos of the night was giving way to a fragile calm. And for the first time in years, Lyra allowed herself to feel something other than tension. Clarity, purpose, and the faintest glimmer of peace. Reddick's voice broke the silence. You've changed everything tonight. Not just for the base, but for everyone who doubts strength comes in a single form. Lyra smiled faintly. Strength isn't just physical, she said. It's persistence. It's courage. It's knowing when to strike, and when to survive. The wind carried the scent of sand and salt, whispering across the dunes. Lyra stood tall, shoulders squared, eyes forward. Behind her lay the night of fire, chaos, and fear. Ahead of her was a future she would face on her own terms. And in that moment she realized, she was no longer the girl who had arrived at the base 2 days ago. She was Lyra Van, the hunter, the survivor, and the force no one would ever underestimate again. The sun climbed higher. The night had ended. And a new chapter of her life had begun.